Thank you for tuning in to a couple of Keemers podcast. I am your co-host, Francesca. People call me Frankie.
And I'm your co-host, Christopher. People call me Chris.
Today, we are talking about Black history. February, as we know, is Black History Month. And what's cool about the internet is we are filming this before Biden and Harris have been inaugurated, but we will be talking about her, Kamala, being vice president and the first woman, the first African American woman to hold office as far as presidential vice president. And we're also going to talk about representation in all forms of media and the importance of children seeing themselves in society. What you say, bud?
With Kamala Harris becoming the first, not only woman, but the first African American to be vice president, I think is really huge in our society and our nation's history because, the reality is this is a big deal that some people don't realize how significant of a deal it is. I think with the exception of Black people and people of color, this is something that we've been working for and been trying for years. And, it's really sad that in 2020 or 2021 that we're still talking about the first of something for Black people.
And women.
And women. Black people and women, especially women, because you hear with other countries and other nations, they've already had female presidents or they already have female leaders. But here in the United States is something that, we still struggle with because of our history and the way we view women and Black people and people of color. It's just really sad. But on a positive note, it is good that we get to witness this history.
Yeah, I know I was very excited to know that Biden and Harris made it to the final election, and with Kamala Harris being, she's Black, but she's mixed. She's, I believe, Indian. Her mother was Indian. Her father is Black, but I don't think he's African American. Was he African American or was he?
I think he's Jamaican.
Jamaican. That's right. Yeah. So, she represents those people of color, and we as the Black community, for the most part, claim her. And it's definitely a big step for women. I've been rooting for women to be, president for sure, but vice president is awesome as well. And I just think this is a major step for our country, as delayed as it is. Like Chris mentioned, other nations have been having women as their leaders for decades now. So for us to finally catch up, we think, oh, America, we're so advanced, and we are in some ways, but there's a lot of flaws, a lot of delays, a lot of, we think we create things, but it's been done before. We recreate the wheel a lot of times, and we think we're the originators. But I know as far as being a Black woman, and remember being a black little girl, seeing Kamala Harris, being vice president. Um, I don't see it happening yet because she isn't in office yet as we're recording this. But by the time we release this, she will have been in office for about a month. And everything that happens in January with while, the old president, 45, was a president, the things that are happening with his followers going to the Capitol and being essentially terrorists. I definitely see that we need this change more than ever. And it's inevitable. These people are fighting for the change not to happen, but it's happening. And, they might get a limelight for a second, but it's inevitable. And actually, I believe these actions will make people truly realize how much there needs to be this change and advancement that we always claim to have, to actually impart it. And the black little girl in me is happy, is excited for Kamala and to see what she'll bring to the table. I think her and Biden are a great pair, and they deserve a chance. Just like my dad told me when I was upset about the last election, they deserve a chance. I don't think any politician is clean of anything. They're humans just like the rest of us. They've done things in their past and made mistakes, some more grave than others. But I think Kamala will do great in her position. And I hope maybe she'll even run for president one day like Biden did, him being VP. So I think they're a great pair. He's been VP. He knows the ranks. He knows what to expect. He can lead her into it just like Obama led him into presidency. And hopefully we'll have our first black person of color president, woman president, if she proves herself, right? Only time will tell. But the representation of her taking vice presidency is most important for kids to see themselves in her, especially little girls. Like, I'm interested, for me, growing up, history, government was boring to me. But, maybe if I saw someone like Kamala Harris, I would have been more excited about it. Maybe it would have felt more, attainable. Maybe not, but maybe so. But I'd never seen anyone like myself be president, vice president, anything like that. So, my history books definitely didn't teach me about black women in history who have run, things like that. So now Kamala Harris is no choice. She's down in history, so they can't ignore that.
No, not at all. And I wish, my mom and other people I know could be here to witness it because, like you said, a lot of black girls of different cultures, ethnicities, people of color who grew up and not seeing that in their history books or government books or even on TV or any form of entertainment or what have you, this really means a lot for them because so many other cultures get to see examples of representation of what that looks like to be, a young boy or a young girl. And now, finally, for the first time in history, little, like I say, black girls or girls of different ethnicities and cultures can relate now, they can identify. Same way in which, a lot of us identified and could relate to the representation that President Obama had, which, I think is going to bring us to our next point in talking about representation in all forms of media. When you think about representation, especially for us as black people, people of color, it's not really often, or it's not quote unquote the norm for us to see it on a regular basis. Yes, we've had periods like on certain TV shows, like black sitcoms and things like that, that will depict a positive image of black families and black life. But then there's also stereotypes too. And, now it's at a point in 2020, 2021 where this is still an issue. I know we've had a conversation about toys and games like dolls and how, it means a lot for you, for our kids to have dolls that look like them. Mm-hmm. Because what some people fail to realize is that when kids interact with each other and they have these objects, these toys, these dolls, these games, this is teaching them from an early age how they see themselves. Mm-hmm. Me being a mental health professional, being that my background is psychology, I am familiar with Dr. Kenneth Clark's Black Doll, White Doll experiment and how significant that is, But again, it's not just with toys and games. It's also with all things. Can you think of any others in terms of representation?
Well, when you were talking about the doll thing, it really hit me. I've shared on my social media platform before a picture of a little white girl in a toy aisle full of dolls, and she's looking up at them, and all the dolls are black. And she's just looking. You can interpret for yourself what the picture's trying to say. It just looks so odd, right? Because you see a little white girl with all these black dolls, and which one is she gonna choose? But I remember growing up, that was my reality. It just, flipped the races. I was a little black girl, and I know lots of black girls can speak and have this story that you go to the store and there's only white dolls. And honestly, unless you had a parent that really made it a big deal, you didn't think anything of it. You just picked the doll and moved on. You might have picked it based on the clothes, or if she actually, you could feed her, or the bottle or whatever. And it's so normal to see a little black girl or a little girl of color to have a white doll. But when you talk, when it goes the other way around, it's a rare sight. And even for myself, seeing that picture just really moved me. It moved me a lot. So definitely representation with toys. And I can only speak mainly for little girls just because we don't have any kids yet. So I don't know the little boy experience with race. I do know I'm not super learned on it, but I know, in comic books, not that that's only for boys, but this is what came to mind. There's not a lot of heroes that are black. I know when Black Panther came out, it was a huge deal. A huge deal. All black people lined up, dressed up. A huge deal for a movie just because the character is black. I'm not saying that's incorrect. I was right there with them. But it just shows you how there's a hole there. Because when just one movie that's positive black superhero, everyone's showing up. Because it's a rare thing. I know Black Panther, I was never in the comics, so I didn't know who he was before that movie came out. I mean, and Chadwick Boseman did amazing. So he definitely did it justice. That movie was amazing, and that's another thing. There's always pressure when you're doing this stuff to do it right, because sometimes we only get one shot. We get one shot, and that's just the world we live in. And it's a lot of pressure, just a lot when it comes into black films, when it comes to the media. And like I said, when it comes to kids and toys, you really got to be careful with that. That's why, as you mentioned, I'm really big on, my children having a decent amount of black dolls. I don't want them to have all white dolls. That was my experience to an extent. My mom did. I was born in the late 80s. So the world was diversifying a little bit, but not like it is now. And, my mom picked the black dolls she could find, but she wasn't going to just limit me to that, because then I wouldn't have many dolls, to be honest with you. But I do also think it's important to have a variety. So if I can find, a doll that looks like they have Asian ancestors, or just different things. And I think also I've seen a line of dolls with, quote unquote disabilities, like ones that have crutches and ones that have, what's that skin? Vitiligo, the splotchy skin, the different spots of skin that are different skin tones on their body, just so kids are familiar. If you're in such a homogeneous society where everyone looks the same, nobody's different. When kids encounter someone in a wheelchair, someone, with crutches, or someone using a cane because, they are experiencing blindness of some sort, that's unfamiliar, that's scary. Or someone that, might have a genetic disorder like Down syndrome or something like that. I think it's all important to introduce your kids to, because representation matters, and not just for that's the underserved communities. It's for even those who are not underserved. I mean, to put it plainly, white people. It's important for white children to be exposed, because that's the biggest issue, of that to me. I want my kids to be exposed, and I want them to feel confident, and I want them to feel like you're saying that the doll experiment. I don't want them to think that if you guys don't know about that, it's the all children, black or white, that they do the experiment with, think that the white baby doll looking exactly the same, right? That's the experiment?
Yeah,
Am I right?
That the white doll they believe is beautiful or pretty, but the black doll is ugly.
And everything is exactly the same about the doll, except for the skin tone. So it's nothing, no facial expression, no clothing, no anything that's changing their decision making, except for the skin tone. So I think, and this is white kids and black kids doing this. I think they did have a few who didn't really make a difference, right? Just a few, but majority, it wasn't even who's the mean doll, who's the nice doll, who's the smart doll, who's the dumb doll, or whatever. I don't think they said dumb, but stupid maybe. I don't know. But all the negative descriptions, the kids, no matter the race, pointed to the black one. And all the positive descriptions, they chose the white doll. So I just think it's important. We can only change our little corner of the world, and hopefully that will spread to all the corners of the world. But can you think of any other?
I know, well, for boys, I know for myself, like comic book characters, absolutely. Characters on a cartoon or TV show or in movies, video games. They're all related in that a lot of them don't display black characters. So when there was a TV show or there was a cartoon that had, black superheroes, that really meant something, like the movie Spawn, which featured Michael Jai White in the starring role. And that was, for technical purposes, a lot of people consider that to be the first black superhero movie that came out in 1997 because, this was the first time in the 90s or in recent history that we got to see the lead character, lead superhero, be portrayed by a black person.
I know we were young, but did it get the type of attention like Black Panther got? I don't remember
No,
because I wasn't really into
no,
that as a kid.
it didn't, which is unfortunate. But because Spawn was based on a comic book series, but no, it didn't. Just like Black Panther was for Marvel, but no, it didn't get the same attention on the same level as Black Panther. And the biggest difference is with Black Panther, all the characters were black. Whereas
Yeah.
Spawn, it wasn't really like that as much.
Oh, okay.
But I bring up Spawn as an example to say, that still meant something for me, as well as some other people that I knew who were into superheroes, because superheroes for a lot of boys represent strength and masculinity, and it was empowering. But when Black Panther came out finally, it just soared through the roof.
Yeah, I think it was empowerment for all black people,
Yeah,
not just little boys or men, for, the whole race. It was like we can do great things, and we do great things, and it should be recognized. I think that's the thing. It's not that we lack greatness. It's that it is often downplayed, and we don't get the credit that we deserve. And so when a movie like that gets promoted so much and all of that, it's like it's a really prideful moment. And I think that's why a lot of times, like with Tyler Perry creating his own studios and his own his own studios down in Atlanta, that's because of what's lacked. He was filling a need, filling a void that shouldn't be there, but it is. So you only have, you can only do so much by trying to get someone else to do it for you. You have to do it. You have to make the changes, if no one else will. And I think that through the years, that's what has happened. And everyone that has come before us have allowed people like Tyler Perry to have what he has and create what he has created in media, so that there can be more opportunity, better opportunity to put out the content that needs to be there. That's how I see it.
one more example that comes to my mind is, even with sports. I'm a huge basketball fan, but I also love football. And, when it comes to football, to this day, and I know we've talked about this, in football, professional football, they don't really talk about the significance that black people have played in the sport, especially since 70% of the league is made up of black athletes. And like I mentioned about quarterback Doug Williams, who was the first African-American quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, this man still to this day does not get the same credit and recognition that players who are white get. And it just shows you that even in today, and there's been two other black quarterbacks to win Super Bowls since him, but it just shows you that, we still have a long way to go for recognition. And not only just the recognition, but understanding that it's important for kids to see that. They need to see that to know, like, it's capable and I'm possible of doing that as well.
It's important for adults to see it too, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we get it deeper than kids. So they're, their impressionable minds, their sponge like learning abilities. So they absorb it best so that they can implement it in the future. But even as adults, we can learn and we can change and we can grow. There's things that me and Chris were just talking about this the other day. There's things that I used to say with no thought. And I probably do it still now. And from 10 years from now, I will say, ooh, what was I saying back then? But now I can reflect, in the last decade and be like, man, I really changed in my thoughts of, people. And I don't say what's right or what's wrong, but just being more informed, being more educated on the subject and being like, man, what you were saying and doing and thinking was really problematic. And there's nothing wrong with, recognizing your mistakes, especially when it oppresses other people, apologizing and making change in yourself, and then correcting it in others softly. I can't stand someone who, is on a new journey or been enlightened about something and they're just bashing everyone over the head with it. That's no way to bring someone into to learning. That just pushes them away. Like I've seen a lot of people say lately, don't call someone out, call them in. Bring them in, talk with them on a personal level. Don't call them out in public and try to, whether you're trying or not, humiliate them or embarrass them, and they just back into a wall in defense mode. So I definitely think that we can learn and grow, and we have been. There's lots of different communities. Sometimes I find myself being overwhelmed with things that, I didn't grow up with or I didn't learn, or, especially going to college, learning about so many different types of cultures, communities, and all that, and learning, where they are and are not represented, the struggles that they have and maybe how I've contributed to that in some way or another, and doing my best to make that change. Education is key. And once you learn something, that's nothing that someone can take away from you. So they can take just about anything, but they can't take your mind and your knowledge. So that's always something I think of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just have so many examples of,
Keep going.
like I said, with representation. Recently we celebrated 100 years of the 100-year anniversary of the Negro Leagues, and what Major League Baseball has recently done now is that they've taken all the statistics from players of the Negro Leagues and incorporated it to the Major League record books. So now Negro League players will be fully acknowledged and recognized for their accomplishments to the game of baseball, which, it's very amazing, and I'm grateful to hear that. But, at the same time, I'm just like, there have been so many kids who grew up not seeing too many black players. I was fortunate being born in the late 80s as well to see players like Ken Griffey Jr., Kenny Lofton, who, Barry Bonds, who also, were star players, but by the time I got a certain age, they weren't really seeing that anymore. And, it's, again, adults and children, need to see this so that way it's reinforcing their beliefs and how they see themselves and know that they can still accomplish that goal of their dreams. Other than sports, I also think about, even in music, Cab Calloway, who, was famous for the song Minnie the Moocher. That was the first, for him, for an African American, that was the first time an African American had a #1 song to sell over 1 million copies. And it's just things like that. Again, to know at a time that we weren't recognized or appreciated, that someone grew up listening to this type of music, and even fast forward to now in the present, just shows you, like, look, we are just as talented, we are just as capable, and not only that, but we matter as well, and we like to accomplish this goal as much as anyone else. Bottom line is, a lot of us, we feel as though we're just like everyone else. Why make it separate? And I think when we celebrate these individuals in these different forms of media, it, like I said, just shows you that we are all capable. We don't lack anything other than, sometimes access or how our culture sees us. And, we just deserve to have that right. And not only that, but we are humans, and we deserve to be treated as such.
Agreed. And speaking of sports, I'm not a huge sport fan. I've always been surrounded by them one way or another. I have 4 brothers and a dad, and now a husband who loves sports. So, and his family loves sports. So I've been always around it. And I think there have been many, many people, many Black Americans to make awesome strides, whether recognized or not, in sports. However, I do think that sometimes with Black athletes are a little overexposed because, showing more, Black doctors, Black nurses, Black professionals outside of athletics is important. I've always loved kid shows one way or another. Whether, I don't know, I just kind of always liked them. And I've loved when Doc McStuffins became a thing because she was a Black little girl doctor. And I'm like, how great, And
Yes.
that this is for young kids and all young kids. Just because the main character is Black doesn't mean it's only for Black people. Once again, like I said, I think everyone needs to be exposed to this, so that it's not a weird, looking
Right.
thing when you come across it. And once again, to empower children and even put that in their mind that that's a possibility for them. Just seeing Black athletes doing great things is not enough. There's definitely room for more Black athletes doing great things, but they aren't the only ones that are Black. There shouldn't be the only ones that are Black and making good money and making the news and getting the limelight, or being seen.
And I think you bring up a good point when you bring up professionals, Black professionals who are successful. You think about, and it shouldn't just be in like form of entertainment, but a lot of times they might show a biopic or even on a TV show, like, for example, Hidden Figures. When you think about the 3 women who were mathematicians working for NASA to help send John Glenn to space, like, that's a huge deal, and a lot of Black people went to go see it, but all people should have watched that movie. And I know when we went to go see it, we had a theater full of people of different cultures and ethnicities in there. And that was eye-opening for me. It also made me proud to see that not only did a group of Black women get recognition and attention for it, but the story was exposed to everyone. It was exposed to everyone, something that I never knew. I never learned in school. My mom didn't know. My aunt didn't know. Like, no one that in my family knew about that story. And to me, again, it shouldn't be like that. this should be more common knowledge in my opinion, but we're still getting there as a country. But yeah, these were mathematicians, and I see when you said about Doc McStuffins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that makes me think about again going back to a show like, well, like on the Cosby Show with Dr. Heathcliff, and then you got a lawyer as the mother. Those were positive.
Even though that kind of backfired.
Right.
But for our generation, before it was backfired, it was inspiring.
Yeah, and
it was rare to see something like that.
Exactly.
But we're not going to go too much into that.
Right. But it inspired many people to go to college. And
yeah, especially the spinoff with
Different World.
Different World, yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing, college full of black kids.
Yeah, it really inspired and motivated people to want to learn and get an education and become professionals. So I totally agree. We definitely need to see more of it from the professional lens and not just from the lens of sports, music, and movies. This needs to be more encouraged and more exposed.
Well, movies, I personally think, can be great too because you can cast and show anything.
Yeah.
You can show black professionals that are more than just athletes. So I think there's definitely room in media to promote black professionals as well.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. But that's all I got to say for today. How about you, bud?
I think that's all I have to say. I mean, of course, I could always say more, but yeah, I think that's
drop
pretty
some
much
knowledge on them if you want to say more.
Well, other than everything that I've said up to this point, I was just going to say that, history is constantly being made, and it shouldn't just be limited to a month.
Mm-hmm.
For us as black people, it should be celebrated and acknowledged all year round.
Yes.
And not just in, factoids that TV shows may flash on the screen during commercial breaks or even just releasing of movies of stories that we're already familiar with. Start telling more of the stories that we're not familiar with, like a Hidden Figures movie.
Mm-hmm.
Bring those more to life.
Mm-hmm.
So that way other people can know and understand, what it was like for us at whatever point in time. And again, bring those professional ones out.
And I think this is the perfect generation that's ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's long overdue, but I think our generation and the next generation is definitely ready for it. So
yes,
I hope that you and your family and friends are celebrating Black History Month in a great way.
Yes.
And we can end this podcast with a quote from President Obama. He said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." So that's from President Barack Obama. And just change your corner of the world.
Yes.
And it will spread to the next generation, to the next household, to the next corner of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.